How we doing? Yes, that's right. Your worst nightmare. Good to see you. Justin, where are you? Got a vacation?
Good morning, everybody. Y'all join me in prayer. Lord God Almighty, you made all the peoples of the earth in your glory, to serve in your freedom and peace. Give to the people of our country a zeal for justice and the strength of forbearance, that we may use our liberty in accordance with your gracious will. Give us strength to live another day. Let us not turn coward before its difficulties or prove recreant to its duties. Let those not lose faith in other people. Keep sweet the sound of the heart in spite of gratitude, treachery, and meanness. Preserve from us minding little things or giving them. Help us to give a clean heart and live honestly and fearlessly so that no outward failure can dishearten us. And then we pray, Jesus Christ. Amen. Pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Four-way test of the things you think, say, or do. First,
is it true? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
See, Mark, you're introducing.
I'm over here.
There you go.
So I haven't found a seat yet, so I'll get there in a minute. So we have 45 members, good attendance today. We have one guest Rotarian, that's Steve Mackler from the Guilford Club. We have 7 visitors today. Steve, I'm going to start with you. Will you introduce your visitor, your guest?
Introduce Wayne Plummer. I met him on a bicycle. He said he used to be in Rotary.
Rather than go into my normal 30-minute speech, I will just say that I have business cards here. My wife and I are starting a what I refer to as my latest money-losing business opportunity. And we are always looking for investors. That's good honesty.
Everybody's going to sign right up. All right, so Chris Justice has 2 guests.
All right, so you guys remember Joey Piccone. He's one of the students at Lionheart Academy, and we're going to give a happy dollar for Joey in a few minutes, and his grandfather, Frank Lacen, is here as well.
All right. I believe Dan Quinn has a guest.
Yep, I got Mark Moser with the Davidson Group. Mark and I play golf together. He plays with me because he's a lot better than I am, and I play with him because when I out drive, he really pisses him off. That's a true story.
Okay, Mike Conrad has a guest.
Okay. Frank Cheney. Frank is the spouse of our district governor, Claudia Kennedy. So he's looking for a club, and I've been on Frank for a long time. I said, this is the best club in Greensboro and all of Rotary, really. He's a golfer and an architect, so we're please welcome Frank here at Gay City Rotary Club.
I have to say, Claudia put me on some lights. I had no idea.
Are you on a committee yet?
Did he try to tell you that it's a money-making venture? All right, Chip Person has a guest.
Yes, this morning Alex Mingler joins us. We met Alex a couple of weeks ago at 5:05. He showed up last night at G's. We had about 15 people there. And he said, can I come visit your club? And I said, certainly. Alex is with Northwestern Mutual Life. He's friends with Tim Albertson, former member here. And so he's looking for a good club. And I said, well, you know, might as well start at the top.
There you go. Well, and then our final guest for the day is our speaker, and Walt will be introducing him.
Yep, I will. Dale, you still doing birthdays and anniversaries?
None to report. Nothing happened this week.
Nobody got older or anything?
Nothing.
Outstanding. Guys, we have a special day today, a special guest appearance for the Family Feud. Chris Justice is back.
Let's play the feud! Play the feud. I thought I had some tickets around here. There may be a feud with no prizes, but I don't know. Yeah, I had some. I had 10 tickets somewhere. All right, we'll figure it out. We'll figure the prizes out in a minute. All right, so Let's figure out who's going to play. I see Danny Farley. That's YouTube gold. We're playing the Farley family. Farley family over here. And the topic, and there's no way to be controversial today, so we're going with the Person family. The Person family today. All right, Farley family, we playing or passing?
We're playing.
All right, Farley family's going to play. Person family, you guys be ready to steal.
Oh, yeah.
The question, top 7 answers on the board. Which office supply is most likely to cause an injury? Which office supply is most likely to cause an injury? Top 7 answers on the board.
Stapler.
In the first time in the, 26-year history of Gate City Rotary, Danny Farley has got an answer correct. Number one answer. Number 1 answer. Good job, Farley. Good job. All right, Bobby, don't let Farley family down. What you got?
Paper cut.
Okay, so it's what office supply is the most likely to cause an injury, and Bobby goes with a paper cut.
Give him another chance.
All right, paper. Ding, 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 ding. All right, third. That was the third on the board. We got 5 answers left. What you got, Tony?
Pencil.
All right, writing utensil. 4th on the board. Ding, 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 ding. We got 4 answers remaining. What you got?
Scissors.
All right, the old scissors. Number 2 answer.
Gotta
Number
be.
2. Number 2. All right, we got 3 left on the board. It gets hard from here. What you got?
How many seconds I get?
They're dwindling.
10.
Office.
2. What? You ever been in an office?
Staple.
No, we already answered.
Staple remover.
Oh, okay, we're going with the.
Ooh.
We're going. All right. No staple remover. You got 2 strikes left. You get injured in the chair a lot.
Yes.
All right.
Playing games. Rolling around.
That's
Rolling
weird.
around, doing some office Olympics. Okay. Desk chair. All right, we got 3 answers left.
Paper clip.
You get injured by the paper clips.
Paper clip.
Okay. You mean the things with the round edges? All right. Get ready, person family. Paper clip. All right, what we got? Letter opener. All right. The old letter opener. Ding, 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 ding. Your flies fell out there. So there were 2 other answers on the board. It was the old shredder, getting your time out of the shredder, and the paper cutter. That's always good.
Ouch.
Paper cutter.
$1,000. That's what it. All right, Jim, get up. I'm gonna just sit here.
About 4 years ago, our member Randy Elliott was flat on his back with back surgery. Asked me to speak. He's getting ready to ride Hope Ride with David Traffic. And I did all this for him. Oh, wow.
I understand that last week a couple of us told you about the wonderful convention that we had in Toronto. I was able to be here last week. But I wanted to encourage all of you to consider coming with us next year in Germany. Mike will be there. I'm hoping to be there. It's a wonderful way to meet Rotarians from all over the world. And it's absolutely great because you're in a hotel, you're walking in the street, you're taking the subway, everybody's wearing their Rotary badge, and conversation starts immediately. They tell you about what they do, what their country, in their country, what projects they care for. So I truly encourage everybody who hasn't been to one to consider coming to one next year. Germany, the year after that would be Hawaii. So let's get ready to have a big group from Gate City.
All right, so as promised, this happy dollar is for Joey Picone. Stand up, Joey. So as you can see with all that Joey's got on, he's working on his Eagle Scout project, and his Eagle Scout project is actually building something at Lionheart's new building, which will be opening this fall. So give him 20 or 30 seconds on that, Joey.
Alright, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be building a 24-foot bench with these things called tracks on it. It's like a type of wood that goes on benches to make it more comfortable to sit on. So I need about $600 for this project to like get off the ground, and I would definitely appreciate your help. Thank you.
Joey set up a fundraising page, and if you guys will indulge me, I'll shoot it out through the the Gate City Rotary email group later. So if anybody wants to hit the link and help Joey out, it'd be greatly appreciated.
You know, let's do a sock check. This is kind of a boring group this morning. I want to see what kind of socks you guys have. All right, Howard, rocking it a little bit. Who we got?
Buster.
All right, oh, Justin.
Buster, you got it?
Yeah. Whoa, Argyle, got the Argyle thing going on. Oh, Steve, whoa! Mike.
Now he's the better.
Bobby, you got socks today, Bobby?
How, Walt?
What do we got?
It's got some polka dots.
Who doesn't have on socks?
Bobby.
What you got, Chip?
Bobby, I'm with you.
I got $2. First off, Wilder's done with school down in Chile. After the students went on strike, the teachers got mad, so they went on strike, shut school down 2 weeks early. Wilder's down here still complaining to the professors. He wanted to take his finals to get those grades up that last notch. But anyways, last day of school, hopped on a bus, 6-hour ride. It's going to Santiago. Yesterday, today, when he's here, goes to Atacama with his friends who are nuclear scientists. They can travel to Atacama Desert, Bolivia, Machu Picchu, and Colombia, because they dance on Friday night or something like that. But anyway, he's done with school and he's on August 10th.
Oh, we got Chris.
Yeah, first time going over. So for my birthday, which is next week, I will be 29, and I am doing a charity charity donation for homeless veterans. So anyone on my, you can look it up on Facebook. May have to be my friend, but I'll figure that out. Basically, the charities, it's going on for the whole month. It did start June 27th. It will be over next Friday. My goal was 10 grand. I think I've gotten a few grand. But just seeing a lot of veterans that are, whether they're legit or not, I just hate it for people, and I just want to do something about it.
Good.
Yeah, I think that's it.
How many guys here have underwear older than 29? Today.
Underwear check. No.
Well, Grandpappy and I, we were watching this particularly gruesome episode of the running of the bulls, and Grandpappy turns to me and he says, you know, sometimes life doesn't want to be grabbed by the horns.
Thanks, Buster. Appreciate it, buddy. Gigi, you stole part of my thunder. I was going to actually call on you to fill us in for our national conference. But thank you for sharing and for the dollar. We definitely need it. Very happy today to introduce Jim Deaton. Jim and I actually joined Greensboro Country Club the same month. Before that, he was captain of his golf team at Oklahoma State, so we do share a hate of the Sooners, I imagine.
Hate the Sooners.
The Sooners, God, at any rate. From there, he was a golf professional several places. Really, he's had kind of two careers kind of commingled and going at the same time. He's been golf professional at Ravenel Club in Houston, and then Fair Oaks in San Antonio. He was golf professional of the year in Florida twice. And then he came to Greensboro Country Club, gosh, it's been 04?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's my and was there until 16 when he finally graduated. He's also been, during that time, a PGA rules official. So he goes to the majors, basically, and helps players out as far as knowing their options, what they can do, all that kind of stuff. One of the other associations that Jim has is very interesting, and he was at Bay Hill, and maybe you guys have heard of Arnold Palmer, I don't know. But at any rate, Jim worked under Mr. Palmer for many years and has a lot of great warm stories about Mr. Palmer. Also, about any great teacher, golf teacher in history you can think of, back to Harvey Keenan, Jim has worked with. So has just an incredible depth of knowledge. He still gets phone calls, I'm sure, from people. We used to actually call him from the golf course and say, okay, look, Jim's hit at the water. And he's yelling at so at any rate, please welcome Jim Deaton.
Thank you, Dr. Howell. And yes, when I was in college, our golf course at Oklahoma State, we had such a tenuous relationship playing against the Oklahoma Sooners that our coach said, boys, if the Sooners are playing for the Russians, we pull for the Russians. So it was pretty intense. As Dr. Howell relayed, been in the golf business for quite a long time. I started playing golf in the 1960s, and in the 1960s, of course, was when Arnold Palmer really got into his winning of tournaments, and he was my childhood hero. So as I progressed through my career path, I was at a PGA championship at Kemper Lakes in Chicago, and one of my fellow members of our committee, he said, you know, Arnold Palmer's looking for a new professional at the Bay Hill Club in Orlando. You ought to check into that. So I put a note in his locker, and in the note I said I'd like to talk to him about the job. It ended up that his starting times during the week and my work schedule was such that I never had an opportunity to talk to him. But about a week after the tournament, I got a letter from him, and he said that he would like to get my information and to send it to the president of his golf management company, and then take it from there. So it was a long, involved process. They had over 300 resumes that were sent in for the position, and they narrowed it down finally to 2, and those 2 then went to Latrobe, Pennsylvania to meet with Arnold Palmer, and he made the final determination. I was flown from Texas to Latrobe, and when I got there, the president of the management company picked me up, and then when he did, he said, it's only about a 5-minute drive to the house, and I said, house, we're not staying in the hotel. He says, oh, we're staying at Arnold Palmer's house. So we got there, of course, Arnold Palmer's, he was already asleep in bed by the time we got there, and they took me downstairs to the guest area, and then he said, well, we'll see you in the morning. We'll have breakfast at 7 o'clock. And I called my wife in there and I said, you are not going to believe where I am. I said, I'm in this room that I can see the pictures from Sports Illustrated when they covered this article on Arnold Palmer's life. And I said, I just can't believe I'm here. So the next morning, the president came down at 6:30 to wake me up. I was dressed, had my tie on, I was set, and we go upstairs and we go into the kitchen, and there's a little breakfast bar there. There's Arnold Palmer sitting at the bar having some coffee and looking at the newspaper. And I sat down beside him and we talked for a minute, and Mrs. Palmer said, what can I fix you for breakfast? And I said, you know what, I'm one of those, I usually don't eat breakfast. And she said, oh, wrong answer. Arnie says breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I looked over at him and he looked at me. And I said, 2 eggs over easy, with bacon, please. And then she said, well, you have to drink. And I said, orange juice would be great. And she set the glass in front of me. And he said, you're not going to have anything in that orange juice? He loves vodka. And I thought, gosh, where is this going? So we had breakfast, then went down to his office, and then he had some things to do. And then I had an interview with him in the office, and he said, now we're going to go play golf. Latrobe Country Club is almost literally right across the street from where he lives. So we went to the club and had a light lunch, and then we went to the first tee, and the president of the management company and the golf professional were going to be in our group. Didn't hit any balls to warm up. I couldn't breathe. And Arnold Palmer had a caddy, and he had a few balls down the fairway to loosen up. The other three we didn't get to. So we made a bet, as Arnold Palmer would like to do, having wagers, and we played 6 holes where you change partners, 6-hole robins. And on the first hole, I was so pumped up with adrenaline, I hit probably one of the longest drives I've ever hit in my life. I outdrove Arnold Palmer by 50 yards, and he looked at me like, you know, are you going to be doing this all day? Well, the first 2 sets of 6, I was on a team against Mr. Palmer and whoever his partner was. The first 12 holes, I was 11 over par. And then the last 6 holes, he was my partner, and I had 2 birdies and 4 pars, and we won money, which I consider that one of the most diplomatic moves I've ever made in my life, because he won all the money. And then after that, I got the offer and became the director of golf at the Bay Hill Club, and I was there for almost 13 years, one of the most wonderful experiences that I ever had. Arnold Palmer loved golf more than anyone I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not exaggerating to tell you, he played golf literally in some form every single day, every day. Monday through Friday, he played at 12:20 with his group called the Shootout Group that was at the Bay Hill Club. And then on Saturday, he played at 10:20. Sunday, he would take it easy and usually show up around 11 or 12 o'clock and hit balls for about 2 or 3 hours, and then he'd go play 9 holes. So he played golf 7 days a week. And he loved to work on golf clubs. And his other big love was flying the plane. He loved to fly the plane, so if anything, if you ask him, probably he would tell you he'd like to fly his Cessna more than he did to play golf. He won 62 tournaments on the PGA Tour, and he's one of those players like Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods and Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, the guys that go out there today, they didn't go out there just to do well. They went out there to win. And it was interesting, there was one day when I was walking through the clubhouse and Mark McCormick, who was the man that started IMG, was sitting there having breakfast by himself, and he asked me to come over and sit down and with him for a few minutes. We started talking, and he said, you know, it's my opinion that Arnold Palmer stopped winning so often when he stopped smoking. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting, because you know, I remember that he made that move to stop smoking because, one, he knew it was good for his health, and he was very cognizant of what kind of image that he projected. When Mr. Palmer passed away, there was an article that came out in Golf Week magazine with a timeline of his career from his win of the U.S. Amateur in 1954 all the way through his victories and then retirement. And in 1973, they noted that Arnold Palmer won the Bob Hope Classic in Palm Springs, which was the last tournament that he won. And the next month, he stopped smoking. Never won another PGA Tour event after that, except when he finally got on the Champions Tour about 12 or 13 years later. It was interesting that Arnold Palmer's attitude was always about winning. And if you remember in 1993, in the Masters, when Chip Beck came to the 15th hole, Chip Beck laid up on that hole and then was criticized for not going for the green. He ended up losing the Masters by 1 shot to Barnhart Longer. And a few days after that, I was in Mr. Palmer's office and we were going over some of the business of the club, and when we got through, he said, anything else? I said, yes. I said, I know you watch the Masters on Sunday. Let me ask you a question. What do you think about Chip Beck when he laid up on that hole? And he said, Jim, he said, do you know how many times I finished second at Augusta? And I went, no, I don't. He goes, neither do I. And I went, okay, I get that. He said, let me tell you something. You don't have very many opportunities to win a major, and when you have an opportunity, you don't play for second. You go for the win. I mentioned that he loved to work on golf clubs. He was always changing his grips out. He was bending clubs sometimes on the golf course. So when he went out to play golf, he always had 2 sets of clubs on his golf cart. He might play the front 9 with one set and the back 9 with another. There's one time I played with him at Bay Hill, and he played a flawless round. He shot 67, he had 5 birdies and 13 pars. And then the next day, he comes out to get ready to go play, and he's down the practice area, and I go down there to talk to him a little bit, and I look and I go, what clubs are those? He goes, well, these are the clubs I was using yesterday. I said, no, they're not. I said, the old clubs yesterday were steel shafts, those are graphite. He goes, well, I reshafted them last night. I went, you played so great, why would you want, these will be better. So he's always working on golf clubs. As a rules official, you get a lot of situations out there, and it's really interesting, some of the questions that you get from some of the players. For instance, at the Masters one year when I was working on the committee there, which I don't get to go there every year, it's kind of a rotating assignment. Stuart Appleby had hit a shot on the 16th hole to the right of the green where the flagstick was also to the right. He wasn't very far away from it, and then they called for a rules official, and I was pretty close to the area, and I was kind of surprised because I could see where his golf ball was located. So I go over there, and he said, I've got the sprinklers on my line, so I want to know where I should drop. And I said, well, you don't get relief or intervention of the sprinklers between your line of play. So you're going to play. And he said, well, no, that's the direction I need to go. And I said, well, yes, I understand that. But it was very specific that that rule, there's a local rule sometimes that's in effect where if a sprinkler, if you were within 2 club lengths of a sprinkler, the sprinkler is very close to the edge of the green, or it would be logical that you might want to putt it or roll the ball on the ground, that you get to move away from that line. But that rule was not in effect at Augusta that week. And I said, well, that rule's not in effect. And he said, okay. So then he starts walking through the hole, and I looked at his caddy, and his caddy goes, he knew that. He was just testing you. And that's what you have with a lot of the players out there, because they know if they ask the official to give a ruling and he gives a ruling that's incorrect, well, they don't get hurt by it. So you get a lot of guys asking more questions than they ever did before. I had a couple of instances with Roy McIlroy. You might remember at the Atlanta Athletic Club. He was playing a shot on the 7th hole, and there was a tree root that went across in front of him, and he looked at it and he told his caddy, he said, I think I can kind of flip my club a little bit, get the ball above the root, and then miss the root. And his caddy said, I don't think that's a good idea. He said, well, I think I can do it. So he hit, and I'm standing not too far away, and I hear this splintering crunch as he hit the tree root. The club bounces out of hand, and he grabbed his right wrist, and I went over to him. I said, you okay? He said, I don't know. So I called on the radio and for some first aid, and they came out to with an ice pack and put it on his wrist. And for the next, he went ahead and played. We had a short delay, which a player is permitted to do that for an injury or if he doesn't feel well. So we waited a while. We let the group behind them play through, and then by that time he needed to go play. And for the next 3 or 4 holes, every time he hit a shot, he let his right hand come off the club and finish only with the left hand with his golf swing. It was interesting that David Faraday, who has some of the most original humor of anyone I've ever heard, he said, well, you know, he's probably going to be okay. Because by being a young man, the right hand is probably one of the stronger muscles on the body. Then it was at Kiowa Island on Saturday. I was a walking rules official and had Rory in my group, and he was close to contention going into that 3rd round, and he birdied the first 2 holes. Then the 3rd hole, which is a short par 4, he decided to go for the green and hit a shot up there that went a little to the right. And if you ever played at Kiowa Island, or you remember seeing on television, there's a tree that's it's about the same distance from the teeing ground as the green. That's actually a dead tree, but they left it there for effect. And when we got there, we couldn't find the ball. And I turned to some people in the gallery. I said, did you see his golf ball? And they said, yeah, it hit the tree and then dropped straight down. So we're looking all around in this high grass and the pampas grass, trying to find it. And I started my stopwatch because we only have 5 minutes for the search. And we're in about the 3.5, almost 4 minutes, and I'm still talking to the gallery. Finally, a volunteer comes over and he said, I'm being told on the radio from the blimp that the ball is in the tree. And we looked up, and you could see a portion of a ball sticking up. Well, in this tree, there was a little area that had rotted out, and what had happened was the ball landed into the tree limb, and it was so soft it was like landing on a pillow, so it didn't bounce off. So Rory started to reach for it, and I went, hold it right there. And he looked at me kind of funny, and I said, let me ask you a question. I said, if that is your ball, is it your intent to declare the ball unplayable? And he looked at me and said, well, sure. I said, okay, I needed to hear that. And the reason I needed to hear that was that if he had touched that ball, he would have gotten a penalty for moving his golf ball. He didn't even think about that. And so by declaring his intent for the ball to be unplayable, if he identified it as his, then he was able to avoid any penalty. So sure enough, it was his ball, and then we decided, he asked me what the options were, and then what he did was from where the ball was directly underneath at that spot, he went away from the flagstick back into the fairway, knocked the ball up on the green, and made the putt for a par with the penalty stroke. And he went on to win the PGA Championship that week by several strokes. Then the next year at Valhalla, I was starting. One of my duties was being the starter on the first tee. And when on the first tee, we hand up the scorecards to the player, remind them of the conditions of play. And Rory comes up there and I'm handing the scorecard of the player that he is keeping. And he looked at me and he said, don't I know you? And I go, yes. I said, you know, at Atlanta when you hurt your wrist. And remember at Kiowa Island when you hit the ball in the tree? And he went, I made a good par there, didn't I? I said, yes, you did. And I think you're going to see him win some more majors. In fact, this might be his week. There's always questions about how some of the rulings are handled. One of the biggest questions that came up at Whistling Straits was the situation with Dustin Johnson. If you remember on that last hole, Dustin Johnson came to the 72nd hole, the last hole on Sunday, with a one-stroke lead, where if he makes par, he wins. If he makes bogey, then he's going to be tied for first place. And he grounded his club in a bunker. And if you remember the situation that year, we had posted everywhere. We posted on the bulletin boards. It was in their packet. It was on the table all during the practice rounds and the table all during the 4 rounds of the tournament, that all areas with sand were considered to be bunkers. And David Price, who's also on our rules committee, who's from Dallas, he was the walking official with Dustin Johnson that day. And as David was telling me during the round, Dustin asked some questions. There was one time that he called David over and he said, this ball is in the bunker, and he said, don't we have a rule regarding rocks and bunkers this week? And they, well, we did. We implemented the local rule where if you have rocks and bunkers, that they can be played as obstructions, meaning that you could remove them. Normally, you can't remove any loose impediments out of a bunker. So he asked that question. Then he had another one just before he got to the last hole, where he had the ball was on the edge of it, and he called over and he said, this ball, is it in the bunker or out of the bunker? And David said, you're on the grass, so therefore you're not in the bunker. He said, so I can touch the sand behind the ball, which the answer was yes. So when he came to the last hole, his caddy had gone forward. If you've ever seen Whistling Straits, when you leave the 17th green, the tee is over to the left and the fairway to the right. So the caddy gave Dustin his driver and then went forward to wait for the ball to be coming up toward the driving area. And when Dustin hit his ball into that area, we had a walking official that was ahead of them. And when the caddy said, where's his ball? The official said, it's right there in that bunker. And then when they got up there, David Price, Dustin was obviously pretty nervous. And he went up to Dustin and he says, is there anything I can do for you? And he said, yes, can you get some of the gallery to move farther away from there? And he said, okay, I'll do that. Anything else? He said, no, I'm good. So he gave Dustin the opportunity to ask that question. And one of the things that we do as a rules official, it's not our position to remind the player where they are or what their options are. They have to ask the question. And, you know, someone said, well, why didn't David remind him that he was in a bunker? You know, if you get the wrong player and tell him that, and then he bogeys the hole, well, then he might blame it on the rules official for intervening with his train of thought, so we don't do that. So that's what happened with Dustin. He just lost his train of thought of where he was, and then grounded his club, ended up getting a 2-stroke penalty there, then losing the tournament by 1 shot, which was unfortunate, but he's certainly gone on to prove that he is the quality player, world-class player that we thought it was. One of the things that's interesting is the different kind of competitions that we have, how the players regard rulings. So for instance, in a stroke play competition like the PGA Championship or the Masters, when they call for a ruling, usually the players will go over there and they're going to take care of their own business. But in the Ryder Cup, it's a totally different scenario. If a player asks for a ruling, and we always have a walking referee with each match, as the player is receiving the information of the ruling, his opponent will be right over there listening at it and watching the drop. There's a heightened interest in what's happening with the opponent when he's giving that ruling. Now, I've had a couple of instances where I would answer the question, and then the player would begin to go through his procedure, and his opponent would come over, he'd say, well, tell me, why did you tell him he could do that? Why is he able to drop it away from that carpet? And why is he able to drop it on that side and not the other side? So there's a totally different perspective in the Ryder Cup. If you've ever had the opportunity to go to different tournaments and the Ryder Cup is ever on your radar, I would tell you it is the greatest sports event in the world of all sports. I've had even people who attend all the other functions. I had one man tell me that he entertains clients and he takes them to the Super Bowl, the NCAA Final Four. He goes to every sports event that he can think of, and he said the Ryder Cup by far is the best event that he's ever taken in any of his clients. And there's a lot of funny stories that happen in golf. I would like to share with you one story, true story, that I thought exemplifies the heart and spirit of a golfer. When I was at the Bay Hill Club, I had a close friend of mine who's a member of Champions in Houston, and he called, he wanted to bring some guys over during the winter to play golf, and they came over in January. There were 8 of them, and they said, we want you to go out to dinner with us one night. So we went out to my favorite place in Orlando, and after we got through, I said, come on, we're going to go across the street to this bar over there. I think you really like it, and then we'll go home. Well, one of the guys in the group said, I don't want to do that. We're going to go back and play cards. And this guy was a really good golfer, had been married 3 times, and he played golf at Texas A&M, and he loved to play gin. And I said, well, I'm not going to play cards with you guys, so if you don't want to do that, that's fine. They said, we'll go have one drink. So we go in there, and in the bar, there's a piano player and a man playing a sax, and there's a small dance floor, and there's some couples on there dancing. And the man Howard, he goes, well, you didn't tell me they had dancing. And I said, well, I didn't know that was important. He goes, I love to dance. So we all ordered a drink, we're standing there, and he's all fidgeting, and he goes, I gotta find somebody to dance. And I said, well, there's some girls over there, maybe you should go invite someone. So he goes over, and he asks this girl to dance. They get on the dance floor, and they're up there dancing. The rest of us, we finish our drink, and they said, well, let's go. And we go over to Howard, and I said, come on, we're gonna go back to the hotel now. And he said, see you guys later. I'm staying here. So he stayed there till 2 a.m., and then she took him back to the hotel and dropped him off. Then he started courting her. In May, he called me and said, listen, I'm coming into town to see the girl that I've been seeing there, and would you and your wife have dinner with the 2 of us, because I really don't know anyone in Orlando. And I said, yeah, sure, we'll do that. So we went out to a nice restaurant, and as we were there, during the meal, the 2 girls went up with the ladies' room. He leans over and he goes, I gotta tell you something. This girl has knocked my socks off. And I said, well, she's a pretty girl. He said, no, you don't understand. He said, since January, I've spent $40,000 on my American Express card courting her. I've flown her to New York City. We went on a cruise. I've been to New Orleans with her. We've been to Charleston. She's been to Houston. We've been all over the place. And I said, wow, that's a pretty big investment. He said, she's really something. Well, then I didn't see him. A year or so later, I made the transition from Orlando to Greensboro, to the Greensboro Country Club. And as Dr. Howell mentioned, I was there for a little over 12 years before I retired. And after I retired, I started going to make some trips that I didn't have the opportunity to do very often. I went to Houston to visit family. Then I called my friend Rod, and we were playing golf, and Howard was in the group. So we're in the group, and I said, Howard, whatever happened to the girl in Florida? And the other guy said, you didn't hear the story? And I go, oh. And this is 15 years later. And he said, well, remember, that last time I saw you and how infatuated I was with her? And I said, yes. He said, well, we started talking about getting married. So she said, why don't we get both sides of the family together and let's see if it works. Now, both of them, all their kids were grown and out of the house. So they arranged to go to Sea Island. He paid for all of the hotels, everything except the airfare to get there. They arrived on Thursday, spent the day together, all day Friday, all day Saturday, and Saturday night they're at the hotel, all having dinner, and she leans over to him and says, I got to tell you something, my kids love you. I think your kids like me. He goes, yeah, I do too. She goes, I think this marriage is going to work. He said, I do too. She goes, the only thing I can think of is that you play a little too much golf. He said, okay. So he waited about 5 minutes. He goes, I'll be right back. And he gets up. He goes upstairs to his room. He gets on the phone, calls his son, who's still down there at dinner, and says, the wedding's off. I'm going to the airport. You are on your own. And he said, what she didn't realize was I had cut way back on my golf. And if that was too much, it wasn't going to work. There are some players whose personalities are so different on the golf course versus what they are in their social life, that their intensity on the golf course, it's like they have a totally different reaction to different situations. Hal Irwin is one that on the golf course, his intensity was always at such a high level that you had to be careful what you're doing with him. And one year at the PGA Championship, he was at Shoal Creek, and they had bent grass greens. You had the August summer, you had the humidity, and during those conditions, you have to go out and syringe the greens during the day to make sure that they don't get into a position that they die before the tournament's over. And what happens is they'll call the officials and say, the crew's going to come up there and water the green in between the next two groups. So then they called me and said it was coming up. So the next group that comes up is Hal Irwin and his two fellow competitors who are playing. So they hit their tee shots, and as they're approaching where the balls are, I go out there, and the group in front of them was still putting. And I said, as soon as this group finishes putting, they're going to syringe the green. And Hal Irwin started yelling at me, and he said, why don't you pick on a different group? He said, this has been happening to us all day. And I go, well, I'm sorry. I said, they said they got to do it now. So I started walking away, and then the other player called me over, and he goes, don't pay any attention to him. This is the first time it's happened to us today. Sometimes when players have those things, as a part of their personality, the golf gods get even. And in a tournament one time, Hal Irwin had a putt, and had another player's, and Hal Irwin's ball, where it was located, was on the way, it was intervening the coin that was on the green. So his fellow competitor said, would you mind moving the coin a putter head length to the side? And it went over and did it, then the player putted. Then Hal Irwin then put the ball down and forgot to move it back, and then putted up a couple of inches from the hole. And when he got up to the hole, the other player said, Hal, did you move your ball back after you moved it? And he went, no. So he said, oh, darn. So he picks the ball up and goes back and then puts it on the correct spot, and then put it out from there. So then after that, a couple holes later, they see a rules official, and he said, listen, I just wanted to explain to you what I did. I know it's a two-stroke penalty, but I'll tell you what I did, make sure it's okay. And he said, da-da-da-da-da. And the rules official, well, Hal, I've got some bad news for you. He said, what do you mean? He said, well, when you putted from one putter head length from the wrong spot, that's playing from a wrong place. And he said, exactly. He said, so that's a two-stroke penalty, but you don't have to correct the error. So then when you put it up there, that ball was in play, you should have gone and put it in. So then when you picked it up and moved it back, you've now played from the wrong place twice. So it's 4 strokes instead of 2. And Hal was not happy. And then, a month later, he did exactly the same thing. Got another 4-stroke penalty. So, I've never been on the Christmas list for Hell Irwin. And it's interesting also, some of the thought processes on players. I was working at the Women's PGA Championship, and Christy Kerr came into the scoring area. I was doing scoring that day, which, if you could kind of think about it, scoring is one of the most intense areas in a tournament headquarters that you can be serving as a rules official, because that's when the players finish their round and they're going to come in, and if they haven't played well, they will let you know. And if the golf course wasn't up to their expectations, they will let you know. If the pace of play was not very good, they will let you know. So there's a lot of venting in there. And so Christy comes in, and they're sitting down there and they're signing all the scorecards. And when she finished, she looks at the card and she hands it to me. And what you do as an official, you try to make sure that they have, number one, that there's 2 signatures on there, one for the player and one for the marker who kept the score, and that all the scores are correct on the hole-by-hole account, which is the only thing they're responsible for. They're not responsible for the total. And so she's looking and she says, okay, I've got the numbers on there. I shot 35 on the front, and then 36 on the back, 71. They got the signatures in the correct place, because of the scorecard it will say there's a line there for competitor and a line for marker. Got the signatures in the correct place. And the other player said, do the signatures have to be right there? And I said, well, no, ma'am, they don't. And Christy Kerr said, yes, they do. And I said, well, I don't mean to correct you, but no, it doesn't matter where they are, even though there's a line there. You could sign anywhere on the card. She goes, that's not true. You're with the PGA. Our LPGA rules are different. And I said, okay, thank you. So then she got up and walked out, and the other player said, is that true? And I said, I don't think so, but we've got an LPGA official here. I'll double check. So they left. So then I called on the radio to the LPGA official, and he said, no, the rules are the same. They're just USGA rules. Yeah, we do it the same as everybody else. I said, okay. So the next day I'm in scoring, and Christy Kerr comes in there, and she goes, did you check on that about the scorecard? I said, yes, ma'am, I did. The rules are the same for all of our associations. It doesn't matter where you sign. She goes, well, when did they change that rule? Well, that I don't know. And scoring is a really important area, because that's where you ascertain whether the scores are correct, and also you make sure that the players don't get in a position where they either post a wrong score or get disqualified for any reason. And one of the things that you have to do, if you've seen some of the different scenarios when you go to tournaments, the scoring area, especially in championships where there's a lot of money involved, it's critical that you identify what constitutes the scoring area. Now, for instance, in most events, it'll be a room or a building. If you look at Augusta National, they have a small portable building behind the 18th green, and when the players finish, they go in there. So that is the scoring area inside that building, and when you leave, when you walk out, then that means your scorecard is official. So literally, if you walk in that building and you take your scorecard and go through it and you hand it to the official, as long as you stay in that room and haven't left, the score is not official. And you can, if you all of a sudden say, you know what, I 3-putted number 17, he put me down for a 4 and I really made a 5, you could change the card as long as you haven't left that room. Now, other places don't have the same kind of facilities. So, like for instance, a lot of tournaments will have a small tent behind the 18th green, and then what we do is we'll mark it off and we'll paint lines on there, and on the rule sheet we'll tell the player that the green line surrounding the scorer's tent behind 18th green constitutes the scoring area. So once you walk across that green line, it's the same as walking out the door of the trailer. Now, as a club professional, there's some more politics sometimes involved in situations with scoring than there are in championships like that, because as you can see, if I work in a PGA championship, even though it's a volunteer position, they can't fire me, and if a player gets mad at me, well, I'm not going to see him maybe until next year. But as a club, you're going to see the members all the time. So what I tell people in the rules workshops that I teach during the year, that for myself at Greensboro Country Club, the scoring area is defined as being in Guilford County. So at the end of the tournament, Dr. Howell calls me and says, Jim, I just realized that I might have done something wrong on my scorecard. And I'll go, are you still in Guilford County? Yes, no problem, we'll change the card. So that's trying to protect yourself. As you have probably have heard or seen in the media, the rules of golf are changing dramatically beginning in January of 2019. We've had 34 rules now for decades, and now it's changing to where I think we're going to have 22 rules. And a lot of the rules are changing to becoming actually more logical. One of the challenges that we're having in the golf industry is that the game is not growing like it did for such a long period of time, and some of it has to do with the change in culture, the change in the millennials. And you know, some of the millennials are saying, you know, I don't want to play golf because you got way too many rules, and I have to tuck my shirt tail in, I got to wear a shirt with a collar, and so many rules that we come up with. When you answer the question, from the younger people, they go, "You've got to be kidding." And some of those rules have now changed. A simple explanation would be, as an example, it used to be that if your ball hit your equipment after you made a stroke with it, if you hit a shot and it happens to hit your golf bag, or if it hit a tree and comes back and hit you, it was a 2-stroke penalty. And then in the Masters, when Jeff Maggart was tied for the lead on the 3rd hole, he was in a bunker off the tee, and he hit the lip of the bunker and it came back and hit him in the chest, and he said, "That ball hit me." He got a 2-stroke penalty. Well, after that, you know, they started looking at it like, well, that, you know, that penalty is pretty severe. So then they modified it down to a 1-stroke penalty. And now with the new change of the rules, there will be no penalty if the ball happens to hit your equipment or hits you or your partner or your caddy, unless it's done purposely. You know, let's say you hit a tree and the ball looks like it's going to roll out of bounds, and you go over there and stop the ball. Well, that's going to be a penalty, but if it's an accidental deflection, it makes sense they're going to do that. So there's going to be a lot of change in the rules. If you're someone who likes the rules, we've gone from 20 workshops to 36 for next year in the anticipation of higher attendance. So I would encourage you to do that. It's kind of fun. Dr. Howell, I want to thank you very much for inviting me to come here today. I hope that some of the things I shared with you, that gave you a little better understanding of golf. Thank you very much.